Let's get started, guys, with the top 10 best cards for YuGiOh Master Duel. So let's go ahead and check them out. I'll also give you guys a brief explanation, as I know there's a lot of newer players in the game. Keep in mind, though, most of these cards are going to be expensive. I mean, they're expensive for reasons. They're all pretty much ultra rares in here. You'll notice that there's only 9, but the other last card, I'm going to consider it kind of conditional to the deck that you're playing, and I'll explain everything. So first off, these are all going to be cards that every single deck will want to craft. You want to build these cards because they're going to be viable not only now in regular Yu-Gi-Oh, but also later down the line in other formats. These cards will still basically hold their power for the most part, unless something else newer comes out that's more powerful. These are the cards you're going to be seeing in the meta of games. So let me go and explain it, as the ban list is different than regular Yu-Gi-Oh for Master Duel 2022. So in a lot of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've seen this in a lot of comments of people that are newer, they're hopping in for the first time, they're getting wrecked, they're like, I'm getting destroyed, they're special summoning 50 different times, they're doing and searching through their deck a bunch of different times. These are going to be the cards that help prevent that, okay? So starting right off, you want to prevent your opponent's monsters most of the time from getting their effects. So majority of the time, you're going to be negating your opponent's effects. Effect Veiler is going to be a card known as a hand trap, where you activate it from your hand. So even if your opponent goes first, you can still activate these cards. A lot of these cards are going to be hand traps. So what Effect Veiler does is when your opponent summons a monster during your opponent's main phase, you're able to quick effect send this card from your hand to the graveyard, target an effect monster your opponent controls. You get to negate that effect until the end of this turn. So that's basically what it does. But it's also a tuner, it's also a spellcaster, as well as other uses, but I'm not going to go too long into explaining every single card, but for the most part, that's what this does. Now, this card, a lot of OG Yu-Gi-Oh players are familiar with. This card is actually banned in the traditional, like, card game right now. For most players, it's one of those cards where it's kind of controversial because it literally defines the game. When you guys are complaining about people special summoning, like you just keep on going, searching through the deck, doing all these things, it's usually going to be something that Maxi can kind of prevent. So during either player's turn, you send it from your hand to the graveyard. This turn, every single time they special summon a monster, you get to draw 1 card. Now, keep in mind, you can deck out, as in your opponent can special summon a bunch of different times to where you can't draw anymore and you lose because of it. It's very rare. Don't worry about that. For the most part, it's not going to be happening. This is one of the best cards like ever in the game, and I'm surprised that this card is not actually banned. So pick this card up, but I will warn you guys, there's a high chance that in the next future formats that this card could be banned, and it's just part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Things get banned. If you play Duel Links, you know what I'm talking about when they have the ban list. So just keep that in mind with Maxi. If you decide to craft these, this could get banned in the future. But it's huge. I mean, you could draw 10 cards, and then your opponent, obviously, if they went first, they're not going to be able to game you unless they're playing like an Exodia deck. You're going to be able to have so many cards the next turn, you will win the game. That's what Maxi basically does, and that's why it's so powerful. The next thing is probably one of the best cards. Like, if I was to put a card in the #1 slot for hand traps, this is one of the best ones because it's the most consistent. So not only is it a tuner, but it has some of the best effects because it's another hand trap. How it works is when a card or effect is activated as a quick effect, you can discard this card to negate that effect. So you get to stop your opponent from adding a card from their deck to their hand. So this players are complaining about the person searching again and again. Search this card, adding these cards. This will prevent that. And it will also stop someone from special summoning from the deck or send a card from the deck to the graveyard. It just basically covers the basis of almost every single mechanic in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! This card just stops that, and that's why it's so powerful. The next one up is pretty much a game changer, but you have to know when to use it. And for beginner players, I would not really recommend going for Nibiru unless you're like, I want to take this game seriously. The problem with Nibiru is you have to know the game very well to actually play this card at a high level, but it is one of the best cards in the game. It's another hand trap, basically. So it's during the main phase if our opponent special summons normal or special summon 5 or more monsters this turn. So those players that are complaining about your opponent summoning again and again and again and again, this is the card for you. So what you do is you tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do, you get to special summon this card from your hand, and then you get to special summon a Primal Being token to your opponent's board with question mark attack and defense to your opponent's field. So attack and defense become the combined original attack and defense of the tributed monsters. So a lot of times in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, what happens is your opponent will make a bunch of stuff that basically stops you from being able to play. before they go for that one card that negates like the monster effects usually is when you drop this card. If you drop this card too early, you will lose. If you drop it too late, you're not going to be able to use it anyways. So you have to actually know the game very well, but this is a card, if you want to take Yu-Gi-Oh seriously, this is one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh cards to craft, especially against competitive players. But earlier on, if you're just like, you know, I'm a casual duelist and you just want to play against, you know, like friends and stuff, a lot of times people won't special summon a bunch of times, especially if you're looking at people that just want to special summon like a Blue-Eyes-White-Dragon pass. This card does absolutely nothing. But however, Ash Blossom is going to be used in almost every single duel this card will be able to see play. This sometimes, against certain matchups, is usually a side deck card. There's nothing in the side deck. You actually don't have a side deck. However, this is one of the best cards to craft, especially, again, if you want to take the game more seriously. Next up, though, we have an anti-hand trap. So this is called By the Grave. What it does is it lets you target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, and if you do, until the end of the next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of monsters with the same original name. So basically, this stops some of the other cards that I've just mentioned before. So they would activate their hand trap, you activate this, and it gets rid of the card, and it stops its effects, so your effects will go off. If you open up with this card and you have an explosive meta deck, you will win most of the time unless they have another follow-up hand trap. This game is all about hand traps to keep up with the meta and how fast the game is. So this card is very, very, very powerful. It's basically the anti one of these. Almost every single competitive deck that has combo, OTK, or even some of the control like board setup decks, they'll be playing multiple copies of this card. Next up, this is Forbidden Droplet. It's another very expensive Yu-Gi-Oh card. This card, I believe, is still $100 plus in real life. It's a very, very good card. So what this does, you send any number of other cards from your hand and or field to the graveyard, choose that many effect monsters your opponent controls, and until the end of this turn, their attack is halved. Also, their effects are negated in response to this card's activation. Your opponent cannot activate cards or the effects of cards with the same original type monster spell and trap as the card sent to the graveyard. To activate this card, you can only activate one Forbidden Droplet per turn. I also want to mention that we are also taking into consideration what the win rate of some of these cards are. This is an excellent website if you guys want to check it out. It is called Yu-Gi-Oh Scope. This lets me see the win percentages of when certain cards are actually activated. I only, however, selected cards that every deck can use because most people are going to be playing different things, so that's why I selected. You'll see some of these cards that we'll mention. So I'm going to use this kind of as a source, as a reference here for like win-loss ratio. A lot of times when Forbidden Droplets successfully resolves and the player has a combo, they will win the game. The reason why is you stop all of your opponent's current like monsters on the board and you're stopping their effects, and then you're going to follow up with your big giant board, and then you're going to win the next turn, basically, or the current turn sometimes even, which is very, very powerful. There's another card that's kind of similar to this, and we'll talk a little bit more about similar cards. There's Chalice, and you can also Dark Ruler No More, but this card is way, way more popular and way more, I'd say, competitive. All right, next up, this card is Infinite Impermanence. You guys might have also saw it on the list earlier. So Infinite Impermanence, what it does, we can do it like this. We can show the full text. What this does is you target a face-up monster from the field that your opponent controls, you negate its effects until the end of this turn. Then if this card was set before the activation and is on the field at resolution for the rest of this turn, all other spell and traps effects in this column are negated. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So it's basically kind of like an effect veiler that you can activate from your hand, just like a hand trap, and that's the way it's usually used. It's not really used as a traditional trap card. However, if you do set the card, I recommend, especially at the start, set it in one of the pendulum zones. In case your opponent is playing a pendulum, you're going to not only negate a monster effect, but you will negate that pendulum zone, and they cannot play out of that. Whereas if you do set the card, they will usually try to play around it. A good Yu-Gi-Oh player will play around it. If you're just starting out for the first time, though, a lot of people, you will notice, will put their cards in the middle. It's just a natural thing. You can also place it in the very middle, and it'll stop that trap from being activated or spell or whatever the case may be. A lot of times people forget about that with this card, so it does have that bonus effect, but usually it's just used for the other effect. The next card that everyone's going to be also playing, that's going to be in a lot of different decks, is called Imperial Order. This is a continuous trap card that negates all spell effects on the field. So if you go first and you set Imperial Order, you automatically win against pendulums, you automatically win against Sky Strikers 99.999% of the time. They will just quit instantly. This card is still very powerful against lots of decks, as it basically just has no more spells. So you play all of your spells, and then you say, I activate Imperial Order on your turn at the start, and then they cannot play any. It's an annoying card. It should have been banned. I also want to mention, just like Max C, it has a high potential to be banned very soon or potentially in the future. So keep that in mind when I'm mentioning these cards. Like, I don't think they're going to be banning, Effect Veiler or Ash Blossom. So these are more safe options. This card could be put to 1. It's different on like the ban list, but this card, it's a little bit iffy. I don't think they would ban this card or this card either, but you never know. So I'm just trying to warn you ahead of time with some of these cards. Now, this is another card that has high potential to be banned. It's called a Floodgate. This is Vanity's Emptiness. What it does is it says neither player can special summon if a card is sent from the deck or on the field to the graveyard. Destroy this card. How this works is you go first. You special summon a bunch of you special summon a bunch of monsters, and then your opponent's turn starts, and you say no special summons. Usually that's game over, GG's. That's how this card works. And it has a high potential to be banned again, so just in case you guys are like, crafting these, I want to mention that. But like I said, you can probably tell there's 9 cards. Now, some of these cards that I'm going to be mentioning for the top 10, because that's the point of this video, is to go over the top 10 best and kind of explain what they do. I'm not going to go too long into it because, we got so many things to talk about. However, some of these are going to be for very specific decks, and that's why I want to leave it up to you what card you want to run. So those players that were complaining about people special summoning like again and again and again, this is the card for you potentially if they're searching and then special summoning and then search for another card. That's how Yu-Gi-Oh works in the meta. Droll Knockbird is excellent. You activate it. If a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the draw phase, you send it, and for the rest of the turn, they cannot add any more cards. You just say that's it. And then they usually have to pass their turn. This card is a game winner, but it is kind of dependent on what your deck is, as well as your opponent's, because, you have to play against something that's actually going to be searching 1,000 times to make it get that insane value. This is a card that you can activate GG. This card I really like. It's another one of those hand traps where it does stop something. You'll have to play a vanilla card, which if you draw, it's basically -1, which is considered brick, as the term in Yu-Gi-Oh community is called. But Gamma is so amazing. So what it does is your opponent activates a monster effect while you control no monsters as a quick effect. You special summon this and another Cyframe driver, and then if you do, you get to negate the activation and destroy the monster. So it negates and it destroys, so it's like way better. And then during the end phase, you banish the face-up monster special summon, so you actually lose out. Like, basically, you only get to really use 1 Gamma unless you're activating it on your turn. Certain decks, like Dinosaurs, will activate their opening plays sometimes with activate Miscellaneous Source, which I'm actually playing Dino, so it's something relevant for me, and that's why I like it. So if I open up Miscellaneous Source and my opponent activates something in response to it, I basically win the duel. I negate that effect. I get 2 extra monsters, both of them being non-dino, so it's like Evo Pill has extra targets. It just sets up the graveyard, sets it up so I have a synchro monster that I can make, and I get an extra monster. Like, it is so insanely good for certain decks. Again, Dinos is one deck that can make great use of it. Ghost Ogre is also a really fantastic card. It is less good than the other hand traps mentioned, but this card is still very, very powerful. Any deck can run this card, by the way. Some of them are kind of conditional. So Ghost Ogre, when they activate something that is on the field, or even a spell and trap, so a monster or spell and trap, and it's already face up on the field and activates its effect, you just destroy it. It does not negate the effect, that's important. That's a huge difference between this card and other cards, so keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of cards that have, like, the card can't be destroyed, or there will be other cards that can protect it, so that's why it's just not as good as other cards. It's more consistent to play the other, like Veiler and Ash versus Ogre, but Ogre is another fantastic card. Now, a lot of people like cards like Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed obviously is banned. However, Pot of Desires is very similar for most players. Unless it's a combo-based deck that needs to search out very specific cards, play Pot of Desires, it's awesome. The other card, if you're playing like a combo-based deck that doesn't need the extra deck, you have Pot of Extravagance. There's actually another card that lets you kind of activate, like, it's almost like a Pot of Duality, but it's better. It's not in this one yet. But Extravagance over here, how it works is you banish 3 or 6. It's always going to be 6, so otherwise you get no value out of it. And then you get to draw 2. So you banish 6 cards from your extra deck face down, and then you get to draw 1 for every 3. So you always do 6 because otherwise there's no point in playing this card. You might as well run Upstart or something. But Pot of Extravagance is another draw power card. These are the only draw power cards I'd say most people play. There's another one, but it's not in the game yet. We'll talk about it when it comes out. Next up, Dark Ruler No More. So a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks are built upon negating everything. This just makes it so you get to stop the effects of all monsters your opponent currently controls, and then on top of that, they will take no damage, and neither player can activate monster effects in response to. So you activate this, you're saying all of your monster effects turn off, I'm going in right now, although they take no damage, they will have 1 turn, but sometimes it doesn't matter if they have a turn have another turn because you build up a board that says, now you can't Yu-Gi-Oh! And then they activate Dark more. Droplets is better, but I'm mentioning it just in case you guys pull one of these instead of the other one. This one you can get for free. You get a Lightning Storm for free if you spend one of the 750 gems. So the Lightning Storm, how it works is you can destroy all attack person monsters your opponent controls. It's almost like a Raigeki. And then the other effect is to destroy all spell and traps your opponent controls. You can only activate one Lightning Storm per turn. So it's basically at the start of your turn, you activate this. You get to pick one of the effects. So it's all face-up attack person monsters or all spell and traps. This card is like absolutely insane for a lot of new Yu-Gi-Oh players. Like, what the heck? It's a Harpy's Feather Duster or a like Raigeki. That's insane. And in high-level competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, we just side deck this card. Sometimes we do main deck it, but for competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, it doesn't see as much play as, again, the cards mentioned before. Another still fantastic card, though. Another card that is great is triple Tactics Talent. So if your opponent activated a monster effect during your main phase this turn, you get to either draw 2, or you get to take control of one of the monsters until the end phase, or you get to look at your opponent's hand and choose one card from it and shuffle it into the deck. You can only activate one triple talents per turn. A lot of these are banned effects, obviously a Pot of Greed, basically kind of like a Snatch Steal, although it's even better because you know, you don't have the equip card equipped to it. This card is absolutely amazing. If you can resolve it, it does win games for sure. Next one up, this is something that I've seen a lot of people are building pendulums now, because obviously we'll get into some of the other cards as the 10th best card. Try not to make this video too long, but there's a lot of to talk about. Anti-Spell Fragrance, if you guys are playing against pendulums, because it's one of the starter decks, and we still have the Electrum in the game. So Anti-Spell Fragrance is a really good card. If you run this against pendulums, it's GG. And also against Sky Strikers is pretty devastating too. But Anti-Spell Fragrance is amazing in a side deck. But like I said, sometimes people main deck side deck cards. If you're really like having troubles, because I've seen a lot of people, keep in mind, there's a lot of people that haven't played Yuga in a long time, and they're running in against pendulums and like, dude, he just special summoned a bunch of cards. If that's your case, because I saw that in a lot of comments, Anti-Spell Fragrance is your friend. Throw it up. And even if you're not playing against it, it's going to slow the opponent down quite a bit. Keep in mind, if you're going second, it kind of sucks. But if you're going first and you open up with it against pendulums, it's game over because they can never set their pendulums. It's nasty. All right, other fantastic, great cards that are really good. Kali Yuga, it just negates all of the, what is it? It negates all other cards and effects. It's specifically for certain DD decks. However, there are alternate ways to make it in other decks. I'm not going to get into it. You can like rank up. It's just a card that a lot of people think should be banned, and it's a pretty insane card, to be honest. Another card that should be banned too, this card is actually banned in like regular Yu-Gi-Oh! In like real life competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! This card is banned in America. So True King of All Calamities, if your deck can make it, again, this is why I made it like 9 cards, but then one of these is conditional to decks. A lot of decks can make this. If you can make this card, you literally declare an attribute. The rest of the turn, your opponent's monsters cannot do anything. So it just basically says you lose, and that's why this card is actually banned, because they're using a different ban list. Another fantastic card is AA Zeus. So you usually stack this by stacking other monsters, but for the most part, AA Zeus is amazing. What it does is you detach 2 materials and you send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. And that's an amazing effect because it's also a quick effect, so you can do it during either player's turn. And then if another card you control is destroyed by opponent's card effect, you get to attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. Fantastic for being able to wipe the board multiple times, specifically for Zodiac players. It's excellent, but there's other decks that can make use out of it. It's still one of like the best cards that's not banned in Yu-Gi-Oh! Electrumite, this card is so good. It's banned. Again, this is another card that could be on the next chopping block for the ban list. But basically, you just add any pendulum monster from your deck to your extra deck face up, and then also has another effect where you can target a face up card you control, pop it, or destroy it. We call it pop it in like it's a Yu-Gi-Oh term, but then you get to add another face-up pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, so basically you add it back, and if a card in your pendulum zone leaves the field, you get to draw a card. Fantastic card. Like I said, it could be banned, but if you're playing pendulums, you want that. That's one of the best cards like ever. And then Halki Firebrex, another card that could be banned in the future. It's still not banned in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's a card that people want banned. So how it works is, once it's linked summoned, you get to spell summon 1 level 3 or lower tuner from your hand or deck in defense position. It's a combo card that leads you into stepping stones. And then on top of that, during opponent's main or battle phase, as a quick effect, you get to spell summon a tuner synchro monster. It's so good to surprise your opponent, because your opponent has to like kind of respond to this, and then you just respond to it by, oh, this is a quick effect, and then you get to dodge things. It's so good. Mascarena is another one of those cards where I gotta mention it. It's I don't think it'd be on the next ban list, but it's so dang good. It's during your opponent's main phase. As a quick effect, you get to link summon a link monster using monsters you control, including this card. It's such a fantastic card, especially if you haven't played Yuga in a while. Try to learn this card. It's one of the best cards in the game because you surprise your opponent, or if you have something that's already used its effect, you get to make something else, and your opponent just generally has a bad time because it's just a quick effect to be able to dodge certain things. It's still, I would consider one of the best cards. If you guys know what Formula Synchron is, it's kind of like the new gen variant of that. Next up, Access Code Talker is one of the best cards for making a game. So, and a lot of decks will run this card, and I still say it's one of the best cards that's still legal in the game for like OTK plays. It's like the new variant of Dark Arm if you guys are OG Yu-Gi-Oh players. So how it works is it requires 2+ effect monsters. Your opponent can't activate or cards or effects in response to this card's activation. So if this card's link summoned, you get to target link monster that was used for material, and it gains attack equal to that link monster's rating times 1000. So basically it's going to have a massive amount of attack, and then you're going to banish one link monster from your field or graveyard to destroy one card your opponent controls. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot banish monster with the same attribute to activate this effective Access Code Talker. So this card is great. It basically comes out, it's really strong, they can't respond to its effect, and you just start blowing up everything, and it usually has like 5000 attack, and then you just basically swing for game. That's what this card is. So anyways, hopefully this video helped you guys out for being able to craft some of the best Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the game. And if this is your first time here and you want to see more new Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel content, we'll be dropping more videos because keep in mind, this game always updates. So if you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell if you want to be up to date on more new Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel content. But thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.